These unconventional times require unconventional conversations. Listen in as your host, Richard Gordon, engages in one-on-one conversations with numerous leaders, elected officials, politicians, and others to learn what's happening in your state, on the Hill, and across America. Now, here's the host of Unconventional Times, Richard Gordon.
Welcome to Unconventional Times. I'm your host, Richard Gordon. I don't think that many of us would disagree that the Democratic Party is somewhat wandering in the desert, trying to figure out who and what it is. A progressive wing of the party has kind of jumped up, spurted up in the last couple of years, and seems to be gaining strength electorally and among the population, among the electorate. At the same time, the majority of the party is really more center-left, really more moderate. And this is creating a tension in the party between the left side of the party, the progressive side, and the predominant side of the party, which is much more center-left. And it has the makings of tearing the party apart as we go into the midterms elections in 2026 and clearly before the presidential election in 2028. With me is someone who knows a lot about this, a true leader in the more moderate center-left movement for many, many years, my dear friend, Debbie Cox Bultan. Debbie is the CEO of the New Deal, a center-left political organization. In addition, she has served as a leader in the not-for-profit world and also was one of the this is where we met, senior members of the Democratic Leadership Council a number of years ago, an organization that many of you may remember, which was founded in part by Bill Clinton when he was still the governor of Arkansas. Debbie, welcome to the show.
So great to be here, Richard. It's so fun to see you.
Yeah, it's great seeing you too. Thanks for taking the time. It's always great having close friends on the show. That's one of the nice things about this. You get to see your pals.
I love it.
Hey, can I start at the beginning? I'm always fascinated why people got into this business. There's a lot of things you could do with your life. There's a lot of ways we could take this journey. You have been someone who has decided for a very long time to focus on being involved in democratic politics. Why politics? Why Democrats? Why are you doing this?
Yeah. I love it. We are old friends, and I have been doing this a really freaking long time.
Yes, it has been a long time. We're not going to admit to how long, right?
Not to get into, but for me, I really caught the bug when I was in college. So essentially, what happened in my life when I was growing up, I was actually pretty religious. I was very active in my church. And the thing that I loved about that time of my life was the service part of it. I did a lot of things like, built the orphanage in Mexico and worked on the soup kitchens and, really felt a sense of purpose through that work. And for a variety of reasons that I didn't really stay in the church. But when I got to college, I was, yearning for that kind of place to make a difference, frankly. And a friend, like lots of us, came back from an internship in Washington, D.C. I grew up in California, went to school in California. I still live in California. And said, you got to come, you should do an internship in DC. I think you'd really love it. And I got there, I got to Capitol Hill working for Vic Fazio, member of Congress. I literally, it sounds so naive, but like my mind was blown. I was like, you mean there's people who get up every day on both sides of the aisle, frankly, and are just trying to make people's lives better. Like it was just like an alternate universe to me. And so I right then and there decided this is what I want to do. And the funny thing, and the thing that I think amazes people about when I talk about that story and how I came to this work, is that I feel the same way today, like literally 35 years later. I feel like we work with state and local elected officials around the country. I have a podcast, as you know, where I get to talk to a lot of them called An Honorable Profession, which I think goes to the point. And I talk to people about why they got into public service. And to a person, people say they saw a problem, something that they felt like wasn't happening. They said, who's going to fix this? And ultimately they realized that we, the people, actually run things. And if you want to make that change, you run for office and you make that change. And I still think, even though our politics, and we'll talk all about it, you mentioned it up top, like vitriolic, lots of divisions, but I still think most people go into politics because they are trying to make a difference. And that's why I feel like I never ran for office myself, but the least I can do is stay in this fight with them, support them, help them govern effectively. And the only other thing I'll say is that, this is something we've talked about a lot over the years, but why the Democratic Party, you asked, so I want to get that in there too, is, I've always believed the premise of the Democratic Party is equal opportunity for all. I still think that's our premise. And also, I believe that as Democrats who believe that government can do good things, we have a special responsibility to make it work better. And I think that's a lot of what's happening right now about where we need to go, what we need to talk about. But that's, again, like, we're going to stay in this fight and try to make government work better and try to help the people who are doing that on a daily basis.
It's your answer is really interesting to me because if someone were to ask me the same question, I would
Yeah,
give
let's ask
almost,
that question.
I would give,
How'd you get in here?
I would give almost the same answer. I would give,
Really?
it is almost a religion, in so many in so many ways, and what we do and the reasons we do it. And I'm very happy you talked about the bipartisanship of this because it really doesn't, in my mind. It doesn't matter which side you're on, okay? We're all fighting for the same thing, which is to make other people's lives better. And the thing I always found fascinating about it is there are other people we don't know. It's not like making your cousin's life better. It's
Right,
making
right,
someone, in Fort Wayne who you'll never meet in a billion years life better.
right, right.
And that's why you go into it. And I think um, I think the public, to a large extent, doesn't understand that. Clearly,
Totally
you
agree.
don't go into this, Debbie, to make a lot of money, right? Because we both could have done other things with our lives and done a lot better. But
Yeah.
it is, and I want to build off that comment. It's a calling, like
It's a
religion.
calling. It is. Well, and particularly for the people who run for office, right? I mean, I actually wrote a piece for the Democracy Journal on this about, why politics being an honorable profession, because people hear about it. It's so, like, just second nature. So for somehow in our pop culture, even like if you think about movies and who the bad guy is, or the songs, there's all these references to politicians being the bad people, and it's like we got to take a step back. Like, these are us, like, right, the person who ran for office because they wanted to, make sure the park got cleaned in their community, or their dad wasn't getting health care, or whatever it was. And particularly for state and local leaders, as we both know, I mean, if you're a mayor and you go to the grocery store, you get to hear from everybody all day long about what they're not liking. And so, they're not making any money. When we met, it was one thing. I mean, now, our New Deal leaders, I mean, multiple people. I was just with one this week in Los Angeles, have had death threats, credible death threats, because of something crazy, because people didn't believe, agree with them on the mask mandate, or didn't like what they were doing on something. So it's really, I just want to underscore, it's not easy to be an elected official right now. Now, that will not get a lot of sympathy votes out there. People are like, oh, poor politicians. But really, particularly at the state and local level, where they don't make money, they don't have staff, it's not glamorous. It is a sacrifice. And I'm really grateful for the people who will step up. It's an act of patriotism to run for office and to go through that, and to continue to fight for what you think is right for your community.
So why did you decide to do it on the staff level? I mean, there's not a lot, no money, no applause. No one ever
Yeah,
says, Debbie, wow, you're wonderful, right? Why?
I mean, for me, that gene that you want to be the center of attention, there is a little bit of, politicians have to, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, like, that
No.
that
Sure.
that you kind of are comfortable with that you're right, you put yourself out there, that I kind of like my public time and my private time, and so for me, I really love helping people who want to do this for all the reasons I said. The other thing I think I've learned that I'm relatively good at over 35 years is running organizations. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of I get a lot of I don't know, just to feel good about, the fact that I can create an organization, build an organization, and have it do good work. And so there's a lot of satisfaction I get from that, from so on the kind of business side of it, running an organization, managing people, being part of a team. So to be able to do that in an organization, in a space, politics, that I love, that works with elected officials who I admire, it's a pretty good sweet spot for me personally.
Before we get to the New Deal specifically, I want to ask
Yeah.
you sort of about my introduction. I want to go back to my introduction. Um, Is there a center left anymore? I mean, we hear so much about the progressive movement. They take up
Yeah.
so much of the oxygen on TV and in conversations and whatnot. Obviously the election of a Democratic Socialist in New York, different candidates. We see what's going on in the main Senate race. It really seems to be moderates are seeming to get pushed out of the party. People who 15, 20 years ago would have been obvious presidential candidates, it doesn't seem to be room for them anymore. I'm just
Mm,
really interested because you really, I mean, Debbie, seriously, besides us being friends, I mean, you have really staked out a position in this center left spot for a couple decades now. And I
you.
mean, the world has, you opened the door to the timeline. So
Yeah, I know, totally fair.
you definitely did. So I'm just interested in how you see it
Yeah,
because even the word progressive is not the progressive of Teddy Roosevelt or, people used to be progressive, meaning they wanted to move the country forward. Now it means something completely different. I'm just interested in your views
yeah,
on where the center left is and
yeah,
um, is the electorate and the people running in different places.
yeah. First of all, I mean, I think yes, the center left is alive and well. I actually think the center left is the center of the center of the party. Not even just with the electorate, which we can talk about, and with the Democratic primary voters are not always what people think they are. They're Third Way did a big research project on this recently, talking about, they're older than you think. They're more centrist than you think. But let's just talk about the elected officials first, because since you raised the mayor of New York, I mean it's absolutely right. There's a mayor, avowed socialist mayor of New York. Interesting. I think he's governing in a way that is really about solving problems, which I have appreciated. There's some things that he ran on. He's like, oh, got into office. He's like, oh, I'm not sure we can actually do that. Let's do so that we can debate that piece. But more to my point, that same night, right? Abigail Spanberger won in Virginia and Mikey Sherrill won in New Jersey. I would
Right.
call them, marquee center left type of candidates, right? Moderate candidates. And then we think about the presidential for '08. I mean, there's a lot of names on that list that I would say are getting a lot of play that would fit that bill, whether it's, a lot of the governors. You're a governor guy. There's a lot of great governors, as you well know. Shapiro, is a New Deal leader. Wes Moore, Andy Bashir, Gretchen Whitmer says she's not going to run. But, there's a lot of really, great governors who I think fit that center left bill. So I really do believe that actually think about the New Democrat coalition in Congress, which is our kind of ideological equivalent in the U.S. House, and they're the biggest single ideological caucus out there, right? So I hear you, because there is certainly the loudest voices in the room, the loudest voices on social media. People who are put forward, I feel like, always represent the extremes because that's good TV. And there are actually, we are seeing. I was with somebody from Oregon this week as well, a New Deal leader, and there are DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, could have a caucus of 6 or 8 people come November in the state house, right? And so I'm not saying that there's not there's not that wing of the party that is in some places finding success. But we know that DSA and the Working Party's family have not flipped a moderate seat, a swing seat ever, right? Pretty much. And so, in fact, I think just ever, if you think about Congress. So, the majority makers are still the center left. And I think that that's really important to understand. What works in maybe New York City is not going to, is not the same thing that we needed to win in Virginia and New Jersey.
But on an issue point of view, as the economy continues to weaken, right, and as
Yeah.
people continue to suffer with extraordinarily high gas prices, with the cost of
Yeah.
food being on the moon, with farmers suffering, because the Strait of Hormuz is shut and they can't get fertilizer and whatnot, the issues that are driving the left, tax the rich, income equality, even
Yeah.
anti-Israel, is
Yeah.
moving a lot of people because they're sympathetic to it. And I'm just interested in your views on how does the Democratic Party reconcile this? I mean, in 2026, candidates get to run on their own, right? You could do your own thing. In 2028, it's very hard when you have a standard bearer who very well could be a progressive. We could get to that later in the conversation. But
Yeah.
how does the party put these two sides together? Are they
Yeah.
reconcilable? And am I just making too much of a difference out of this?
No, I mean, look, I think that there's real alignment across the party, which is great actually for us, for Democrats, big D Democrats, right? In the for 26 in particular, to your point. I mean, I think across the party, there's a lockstep about the problem, which is cost of living and affordability. And I think that there's a lot of people out there talking about nothing else. We're not getting distracted, pulled into the crazy conversations that they want to, Republicans always do well on things like trying to box us into a corner on, identity politics, on cultural issues. And I think that across the board, Democrats have been really focused like a laser on affordability and cost of living. And that's the right thing. That's the right place for us to be, both because it's really where people are hurting, and it's what's driving, like you said, people's voting patterns and what they're going to do in November. And I mean, this is a unique. The Republican Party is so vulnerable, right? I mean, that's such an understatement, right? I mean, every indicator is going in the wrong direction for them, and they're not only, seem to be fine with it. The president saying today doesn't care about the midterms, as the other day saying doesn't care about what people, are feeling. That's not factoring into how he feels about Iran. So, I mean, they're giving us a huge opening. I'm delighted that Democrats are kind of staying disciplined and walking through the door of trying to figure that out. But you're absolutely right that running against Trump is not going to be enough in 26 is kind of what I'm paraphrasing from what you said. And we're going to have a aspirational kind of positive agenda and message going into 28. And so that is, I think, going to have a conversation. But look, I think that there's I think what has to happen for moderates, for the center left, is we have to understand the sense of urgency that people are feeling. And so I still believe that the public-private partnerships, the creative problem solving, a lot of things that are kind of hallmarks of being a center-left type of results-oriented leader are still the right approach to actually getting stuff done, which at the end of the day is what people want. What they care about, right? They want to. They don't want someone who's just going to yell louder, right? If we win because people feel like the Republican Party is rightfully feel like the Republican Party's fallen down the job on actually delivering on anything about making their lives better. Us having said that for 2 years is not going to be enough. We're going to have to show them that we can actually do something. I'm a little bit worried, actually, even more about the center, left debate. I'm a little worried that we're going to do well in 26. I think that it's going to be a very big wave election, and that we're going to take the wrong lessons from that and somehow think that people have now embraced the Democratic Party, when we both know every single poll that we continue to see from anybody says that they hate us both. They think the Democratic Party is out of touch. We have not gained back trust. They just don't like them more. And that's not a great place going into 28 to be in. We need to fix that.
The one thing we know for sure, definitely for sure, is the Democratic Party will 100% take the wrong message. That is a
well,
that
we're
is
going
a
to
given.
have to keep. We're going to have to try really hard to say that to keep it reminding people that we actually have to deliver and govern, and we have to govern. And part of the Democratic, part of that is also like, right, we've had this conversation for years, but the Democratic Party loves to talk about policy. We really do, to our start about how we both got into politics. People get into this because they want to solve problems. But we tend to focus on the inputs, I feel, too much. How much money did we spend? What bills did we pass? And not enough on the outcomes. What doesn't matter what bill you passed, what did it actually do? And are we talking about government doing something? Or are we talking about making people's lives better? And I think both those things need to shift, and we need to have a sense of urgency. We no more blue ribbon commissions, no more solutions that take 5 years. I mean, some things like, we have a lot of leaders around the country working on housing, for example, and some things just take time, like building more housing, but that's not sufficient. So while you're also doing that and cutting red tape and trying to make it quicker to bring supply online, what else can we be doing to get people in homes? And people are doing some creative things. So, but it's like, we have to understand that people's sense of urgency is fair, because they're not just feeling, I mean, they are behind. The prices are out of control, and we need to actually have some solutions, even if it doesn't fix every problem, that shows that we're in their corner and at least fixes a problem for them.
What a perfect segue to talk about the New Deal. So
the New Deal.
Let's start from the beginning. If someone said the New Deal to me, if I didn't know you, I obviously would think of Franklin Roosevelt, because that is the New Deal. So why'd you pick the name? Why the New Deal?
So the name was picked when I got here. I was but it's the New Deal. The answer is it's an acronym that stands for Developing Exceptional American Leaders. And I do think that the name is apt because obviously Developing Exceptional American Leaders says exactly what New Deal does, which we can talk about. But I've been getting this question a lot more lately, interestingly, about kind of the FDR connection. And while I have said this was not a nod, to that actually, but I kind of feel like we're in that moment that FDR was in this kind of the country's really at this historic crossroads. And I think that we could learn a lot from what FDR did, particularly when it comes to thinking about government as a tool to making people's lives better and bold experimentation and willing to, say, hey, this isn't working, let's try something else. Like there's a lot of lessons, again, I think the big difference for me is that, that tended to be a little more big government. Government can solve problems as opposed to government as a catalyst for people solving their own problems. But I think there's still a lot of legacy of FDR that is kind of infused in what the whole ethos of New Deal is as well. Our New Deal is.
It's interesting, as you're talking, I'm thinking that your old logo used to write out the DEA. They used to write it out. So, but you reminded me of a quote from my former boss about FDR, which was, he lifted himself from a wheelchair to lift the nation from its knees.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote. I love that. And that sense
That
of
is,
public service, right? It's not, yeah, I mean, it's what we need. It's what we
yeah.
need right now. And
So,
just the sense of community. Sorry to go on about this, but I mean, the other
no,
thing about
please.
him was like, think about this kind of the sense of community, right? I mean, the war on poverty, just bringing a lot of people together, bringing people in. I think that another thing that is really top of mind for me is we're going to have so much need to repair, not to go backwards, but to restitch this sense of community, this engaging of people, having people feel connected to each other again. I'm a big proponent of national service. For example, where we just have, we have ways for people to engage and to be in community with one another. I mean, DLC, opportunity, responsibility, community was the tagline, if people remember that back in the day where I grew up, as you noted. I still think those are three pretty right words for where we need to go. And so, the community piece of FDR, the building of, public works in places and giving people jobs and having the sense of you're part of together, we are part of something rebuilding, I think is a really going to be an important part of where we go from here.
I hope you're right, not on a political level. I hope you're right, in the sense that we should all embrace who we are and that it's okay to disagree with somebody and still be their friend.
Totally.
And we could still
Yes.
go help each other, even though, I mean, I disagree with people all the time. It's what you and I do. If you're in politics, you disagree all the time with
Of
half the
course.
people, and that's just fine,
Yes.
and I hope we could get back there. But
Me
talk to me,
too.
I mean, I know this is your 15th anniversary, the New
Yes.
Deal's 15th anniversary.
Yes. The New Deal's 15th anniversary.
What was the spark? Why
Yeah.
did people suddenly say, aha, we need this?
Yeah. So the woman who founded New Deal, one of my closest friends, is a woman named Helen Milby, who she and I worked together at the Democratic Leadership Council. And
A
it was really
wonderful
her
person, I should
vision.
add.
Yes, a wonderful person. And it was really her brainchild. And I was very grateful that she brought me on as the founding CEO. And so we've been doing this together for all 15 years. But the idea really was that, particularly as the DLC was ending, and where was the organization that was going to be out there finding up and coming, pragmatic state and local elected officials and supporting them both as they governed, which the New Deal did a lot of. You had been to some of our, the New Deal's, DLC was doing some of that with like its national conversations and everything, bringing state and local leaders. But also for her lens, she was one of the leaders of the New Democrat Coalition. So where were those candidates coming from? And when people were, asking for an endorsement from the New Democrat Coalition, people didn't know who they were because there was no kind of pipeline for that. So when I got here at the beginning and we started launching this thing, I mean, people say, how is it different? How has it changed over 15 years? The amazing thing to me is that like our mission has been completely spot on North Star for all 15 years and still is. We've been able to expand what we offer and how we do it and how many people we serve. But the idea really was that we were going to go out and find exceptional leaders. We invite people to join New Deal. So we have about a 20%, I've got college on the brain, I've got college kids, so about a 20% acceptance rate, if you will. So, we have a lot of
What
really
do you mean by
great,
that? What do you mean by
so
that? I mean,
people
you
can
make it sound like
yeah,
it's a college application. So they
yeah.
apply, you want
So people,
applies?
so people, you can apply themselves or they can be nominated by someone.
Okay.
And then over the course, so each year we do between 1 and 2 classes of about 20 to 30 New Deal leaders, a class. And so, for example, we're putting together a class, our summer class right now. For this year, we have 120 people who have nominated, and the class will be about 25 people.
And what are you looking
So
for?
we're looking for people who are demonstrably what we would call, to your point, when we started this, we were calling it pro-growth progressive. We can talk about the progressive word, but I think
Okay.
it's those people who are problem solving, pragmatic, really results oriented. We tend to work generally in the economic opportunity space, very broadly defined, and then have added kind of democracy along the way. But so in that first bucket, that's, are people working on whether it's economic development or healthcare or climate or education, AI. We have a lot of folks who are figuring out how to use AI to make government work better. So we look for people who fit that kind of ideological bill and actually have at least one policy that they've championed that we can say, look at that policy, that's what we mean. We're also looking for people who kind of we have a kind of a temperament lens, if you will. And to me, that is about people who are really trying to solve problems and not just throw bombs or, kind of score political points on social media, but really doing the work. That's important right now because I think, we hear from everybody that they want fighters, right? That's what people want in their elected officials. So I don't mean mushy. I don't mean temperament that means, not a fighter. I mean, they're going to fight for results, though. They're not going to basically just, yell so that they can,
Bomb thrower to be a bomb thrower.
but for be a bomb thrower. So we want people who are out there, loud and fighting, but we want them fighting to get shit done, frankly, right?
So is
And
there
not,
an
yeah,
ideological litmus test? I mean, you speak about being center left. Is there an
yeah.
ideological, could someone be too far to the left or actually too far to the right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's how I would define those two things together to me make up
Right.
what I mean by center left. So yeah, there are people who we look at and say, no, they, actually that person hasn't spent a lot of time trying to get stuff done. They're out there, yelling about an issue, or it could be that, look, their approach is really different. They're more big government than we are. They're not really looking at, government as a catalyst. So yeah, there's definitely people who don't fit ideologically. And then the third piece, which is important, is the criteria is, are they rising? So we invest a lot in these folks. We skew very much younger. We try to get people early so that we can help them govern effectively. Because at the end of we don't work on the campaign side of the house, we work on the governing side. But to me, again, kind of a DLCism that I, grew up with and absolutely 100% embody, which is the best politics is the best governing. And so, if we can make people help people govern effectively, we think that they will rise in public service. And so, and that's borne out. We've been doing this for 15 years. People will know a lot of people who have come through the New Deal. So Pete Buttigieg, probably the most well-known New Deal leader, right, was a New Deal leader from the time he was very early in his tenure as mayor of South Bend. 3 governors, now 3 members of the U.S. Senate, 16 members of the U.S. House, and we have 40 of our about 250 leaders, which we keep our group capped at about 250, 300 people. 40 of them are currently running for higher office right now. So it really is a pipeline into higher office, and that's important too.
It's interesting because Republicans are famous for creating pipelines. Democrats are not famous for this. If
Yeah.
you look at Republicans, they start at the school board and they nurture people and they help them move up. So someday they run for Congress.
Yes.
Democrats, not so much. I mean, Democrats have focused over the years on, the higher level, and then they wonder, why isn't there anyone to run for the higher level? Well, guess what? There's no one at the lower level. So is that
Yeah.
really what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's definitely a big part of what we're doing. And I mean, and I say this all the time, but like, people are like, where's the bench? Oh my gosh, let me tell you, let me introduce you to 250 elected officials from 49, 50 states. We have a really great bench out there. So yes, that's a big part of what we're doing. I think there are other organizations that are doing it too. Some of the people who do more on the campaign side of that, like some of the, whether it's Emerge or New Leaders Council or others. Next 50 is a partner of ours that works on the campaign side that's finds 50 young people and push and supports them. And a lot of our folks end up as Next 50 endorsees. So I think there are people who are doing it, but I totally agree with you. Like our instinct is, I mean, and not only do we like only focus on the higher levels, like we focus on what feels good too often. I mean, this is a big conversation within the Democratic Party itself, and particularly in the center left circles, is, I don't want to pick on her, but let's just take one example. We love to give money and to support something that makes us feel good. So when Amy McGrath was running against Mitch McConnell, right? I mean, the amount of money that poured into Amy McGrath's campaign, and again, I don't know her, but she seems like a wonderful person. That was not a race that we were going to win, and we spent so much money. Right. Because people felt really good writing a check against Mitch McConnell. I think Republicans have been much more disciplined about, being, focusing on winning. And so, we need to focus, to your point, on kind of those, where we can win and to expand the map. And if we do that and use our resources wisely, we can expand the map out a little bit of what's a winnable seat, actually, So I think that's really important for us to think about as we head into 28 in particular.
You mentioned Mayor Pete as an alum. You mentioned the three governors. I guess Stein is one.
Josh Stein, Josh Shapiro, and Matt Meyer in Delaware.
There you go.
And we've got a few running this time. Jocelyn Benson in Michigan is running, Aaron Ford in Nevada, and Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin. We're all running for governor.
Are those three people we should be paying attention to? Who should we be paying attention to?
Definitely.
Rising stars.
Oh my gosh, there's so many of them. I mean, those three are great. We have a lot of, we have a lot of people running for other statewide offices. I feel like, an office that we spend a lot of time working with right now is secretaries of states and how important they are.
That has changed over the years, hasn't it?
So much more attention that they absolutely deserve. So, whether it's Adrian Font, we have about 7 of them, but Adrian Font is in Arizona, Tobias Reed in Oregon, Jenna in Colorado.
Jenna Griswold.
Jenna Griswold. I was listening. She's running for Attorney General right now. Griswold for a second. Yeah, and then we have another woman, Amanda Gonzalez, who is the Jefferson County clerk elections person who's running for Secretary of State to replace Jenna as Secretary of State. So, so there's a lot of, there's Maggie Toulouse Oliver is a Secretary of State running for Lieutenant Governor right now in New Mexico, Steve Simon in Minnesota, a lot of really good people running for those offices, which is really great. And then, there's people who are, we've got a cadre of amazing mayors out there who people should pay attention to, whether it's Justin Bibb in Cleveland or Cavalier Johnson in Milwaukee, or the woman I was just with right here, Lacey Beatty in Beaverton, Oregon, is really doing a great job. Kate Gallego in Phoenix. I mean, we have so many amazing. Like I said, we're picky at the top. So I can't choose among our folks because we're so picky to start with, but people are really continuing to make progress, and people should have a lot more hope than they often do.
One of the things I'm always fascinated with is in many, many states, Democrats cannot win statewide, but they win the mayor's races. And that's actually an interesting discussion to have someday with mayors. I find that very interesting.
It is.
Indiana is a great example where you absolutely cannot win statewide, or you haven't been able to for many years. This year, I think they will with Bo Bai, but had to get that in there.
Yes, of course.
But
a Bo Bai plug, who should be a New Deal leader after he wins. Actually, we can talk about that too.
Well, you're talking about secretaries of state, so we'll see. We'll see where Bo goes. But where you could win races on certain levels, but you can't win them statewide. I want to ask you about your slogan, because expanding opportunities, spurring economic growth, and creating broadly shared sustainable progress. First of all, who could object to that? I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or a Martian. I think that we can all agree to that. Isn't that what the Democratic Party is supposed to be doing? Isn't that what they're supposed to be doing?
I think so. Yeah. Oh, I mean, you mean why New Deal versus the Democratic Party at large? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's a slogan I think that anyone should be able to.
Right? Well, good. And I think, I would say, this kind of goes back to your point about the differences in the party. But to your point, when I think about New Deal leaders, like, I mean, I've been doing this work a long time, as we've already established. Worked for an organization that was very much, two now, actually, that they're very, very self-identified center left, trying to move the party to the center to for the purpose of broadening and expanding the tent, right? For the purpose of being able to build a broad governing coalition that can get lots of support, right? Where you can win independents and even some moderate Republicans potentially. And so, that's just math, right? Like, we know this, but it's a third, right? You can't just win Democrats to win
Right.
an election, whether it's a statewide election in many places or whether it's certainly the national level. You've got to be able to win your side of the aisle. You've got to be able to win deep into the into the center with independents and even moderate Republicans. So this idea that if we just move farther left, somehow that's going to work on the math, it literally does not. And so to the point that you're saying about this slogan, I would tell you that New Deal leaders across the country, like, they govern in the way I'm talking about. They govern thinking about results and thinking about delivering for people, but they don't spend their day thinking, am I center left? Am I center, left?
Sure.
They're governing, and they're building broad coalitions that probably often do include people who are farther left of them or even to their right. But what is important and instructive is how they're able to do that and win office and govern effectively. Like, one of my favorite things about New Deal is that we really are deliberate about going out and finding New Deal leaders, not just in blue cities and in safe Democratic seats. We have, Grant Hochschild in Minnesota, northern Minnesota, who's in the legislature, the very last Democrat standing in his area. Everybody around him has turned red, and he continues to win in his area. We've got Zeb Smathers, the mayor of Canton, North Carolina, in the hills of North Carolina, who wins as a Democrat. And so to me, I think we've got to, I love working. Kayla Young, who's one of the 9 senators in West Virginia, who's the tattooed granddaughter of a coal miner who led to take the ban off of nuclear power in West Virginia. She's fascinating. She's smart. She's she puts together a very unusual coalition, and by being herself and being focused on getting results for her state. So I think that, like, we've got to actually, those are the people I particularly love working with, are people who are defying odds and winning as Democrats. And we have to say, what can we learn from them, and what should the party take from that? Not as some of our beloved friends in Washington like to do, what should we tell them they should do? Like, I like to flip it on its head. What can we learn from them, and what should the Democratic Party be taking from their successes and incorporating into our brand as a whole?
Well, let's talk about that, because I read your election report that you have online,
Mm-hmm.
to contrast it with the DNC's election report, which is a
Yikes.
political and PR nightmare. Why did you do the report? What were you trying to get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the question. I mean, really, exactly what I just said is, like, we have these leaders who are winning in hard places all over the country, and we wanted to learn from them what worked for them. And so we went out, and our report is really based in interviews with folks across the country who won, particularly including in hard places, and said, what worked, what didn't work, what should we learn? And one of the things which we've known but is frustrating is that a lot of our leaders feel like they have to run, with a brand that is not helpful to them, right? I mean, or and
Well, the
one of the
title is
things
toxic in a lot of places.
in some places, and that's a
Sure.
problem. I mean, obviously, I'm saying, to state the obvious, that's a problem. So how are people be able to differentiate themselves? How are people be able to win? And a lot of what we learned was, like, well, get out there and be in your community, speak your community's words and language, speak in normal talk, go everywhere, talk to everybody. Because then when the Republicans try to caricaturize, you as, like, whatever, right? And say, I know that person. I know Kristen
Right.
McDonald Rivet in Michigan, and and that's not really how she talks, and that's not what she talks about. And so that was a really important piece coming out of that election election thing. But as was the idea that, like I said, like you focus like a laser on the issues that matter most to people, and you talk in language that people can understand, and you don't take anything off the table. You go everywhere. You don't say. I think that's really been a problem for Democrats. There's been years we've done better and years we've done worse, but this idea that we can, you talked about Bill Clinton and the DLC, but right, one of the things he did so well was to minimize his losses in places that he knew he was going to lose, right? But so for somehow we've been all about trying to run up the score in the places we're already going to win, and kind of forgetting about the places we're going to lose. Even if we're going to lose them, if you lose 70-30 and not 90-10, that's a big difference, right? And so you got to go out and talk, and you got to go out and talk to people. Those are people that have the same values and same needs and same desires as the United States as Americans. People want the good schools for their kids and the economic prosperity. And so if you can go out and talk to values and talk to and show up, I think that goes a long way.
Well, one of my favorite quotes in the whole thing was by one of your members, who is running for Congress in Pennsylvania, Mayor Paige Cognetti of Scranton. And let me just read it, because I just thought this was terrific, and I think really sums up what's about. And she said that the way you win elections is listening to people who win elections on the ground is really important, and usually our local voices get drowned out.
That's
And that's
right.
the point, isn't it? That
That's the point.
someone
That's the
like Mayor
point.
Cognetti, who is on the ground in Scranton, understands what it takes to win Scranton, Pennsylvania, and what takes to win Pennsylvania. And I think
That's
people,
right.
and her comment that they're not being listened to, I think is huge. And that's why I thought the report was very interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just want to put a plug in for Paige. Thank you for raising her, because she's fantastic, and she's a great example, because right, Paige is somebody who came into office as mayor running against a corrupt Democratic machine. Actually, she ran originally as an independent, and came in after being on the school board, and said, what's happening here is I can clean this up. And now she's running in a congressional race really that needs to be cleaned up against a person who's really taken advantage of more stock trades than any other member of Congress, I believe, all the stuff. So she's had a great example of being a school board member, being successful, being a mayor, really cleaning up Scranton, and building a very broad coalition, where she brought lots of people across aisles together, and then now trying to do that in Congress. And so that's a great kind of example of a New Deal trajectory.
Let me run through a couple issues, because I know we're short on time.
Yeah.
New Deal really does not go after President Trump in a really large way. A lot of groups, and you touched on this earlier, a lot of groups are just anti-Trump, no matter what he says, he's wrong. What I found with you is, Debbie, not you personally necessarily, but the organization, it's not anti-Trump to be anti-Trump. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I was interested in your comments on the Voting Rights Act and the Supreme Court, because that is a place where you called out the administration. That is a place you called out the court. But I find a lot of other organizations are literally, let's just go after the president to go after the president. Do you think that works with the public, or what are they looking for? I think you touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. It's going to work for 26. And let me just be clear. This is the most corrupt, ineffective, heartbreaking, frustrating, administration. I mean, this is historically terrible. So, and he is historically terrible. So I just want to be super clear. I am, I can't believe we're living through this, actually. But with that said, I think the reason that we probably don't spend as much time, we will call out specific issue, particularly as it relates to state and local leaders, right? I mean, what they're having to, our state and local leaders, a lot of what we're doing right now is trying to help them govern in this chaos, whether it's how to deal with, ICE on the ground in their communities that are sowing chaos and lawlessness, whether it's, people's funding being cut for no reason and causing chaos. So I mean, there's plenty of substantive stuff we're dealing with that is to push against and to, because of this terrible administration. But what I do believe at the end of the day is that being anti-Trump will not be enough to get us to be successful as a Democratic Party. It will be in 26 because it's so terrible. And this will be, as midterms often are, a referendum on the president. But in 28, I don't think we want to be aiming for being the lesser of two evils. I think we want to be, we want to put forth an agenda and leaders and a message of hope and of aspiration and bringing people back together and fighting against this division and this administration that's really, I think, sowed a politics that and even just a vision for this country that most of us like just don't even recognize, right? And this that and again, not to go backwards, like I get that the 50, we're not there was a lot of problems, right, with America that we've been constantly trying to solve and make progress on. I feel like we've just kind of gotten stuck in this dystopian, everything is bad, everybody that doesn't agree with you is bad, thing that is anti-American, where we come together, we hash out our differences, and we try to make progress. So I think that's probably why it's not that we don't agree with a lot on how terrible the Trump administration is. And look, I am all about bipartisanship where you can find it, and there's a lot of leaders across the country, and we've elevated a lot of this. We just had a panel at one of our conferences in North Carolina that I moderated with some of our leaders who are in super majorities across the country, and asked them, like, how do you get stuff done in a super majority, right? And they had some really good advice for: you fight when you have to fight, but you also build relationships where you can. So I'm all for that. But I will say that the capitulation of the congressional Republicans has been a pretty hard thing to watch. We need all Americans to stand up against corruption and anti-democratic behavior. And so it is a strange time to have to thread that needle. But I think that I maybe err on the side of trying to make sure that Democrats have something to say, because I think that is going to be super, super important going forward.
Quickly, tell me about an Honorable Profession podcast.
Oh, thanks. Yes, please listen to it if you haven't already.
How do people find it?
But anywhere you get your podcast, it's called An Honorable Profession. You can also go to our website, newdealleaders.org, and find all of the stuff that you've been talking about, Richard, our election, post-election.
You're way ahead of me. This is like my 65th show. I think you're up to like 365.
We've done over 300. Yeah. We had Secretary Pete for our 300th episode, which was super fun last fall. But we talk every week to mostly to elected officials, New Deal leaders across the country, about why they get into public service,
like Andy Burke, who I just had on.
Like Andy Burke, the former mayor of Chattanooga, Tennessee, who's actually the New Deal's board chair at the moment, a great leader in our organization.
Wonderful.
But I think one of the things that I love about that podcast and doing it, and we say it's like giving people hope in the era of non-hope, is to kind of go back to where we started, which is to remember why people got into this business. And I feel like talking to folks gives me a lot of hope every day, where it's like, despite everything that's happening, they're continuing to run, actually, even because of it sometimes. And they're continuing to fight for, jobs and economic growth and good schools and, fighting climate and all the things that a lot of us care about, and often making progress despite what we hear on the news every day. So hopefully it gives people a little sense of hope.
Okay. So if someone's sitting out there listening to this and they go, wow, that's really interesting, I'd love to contribute, how would they do that?
Oh, thank you for that question.
You can tell we're old friends, Debbie.
We're old friends.
That one was for you.
That was for me. Yes. Same place. It'll be very easy. Go to newdealleaders.org. There's a contribute button on pretty much every page you're on. So you can contribute right there as well.
Last question. What do you see for the 2026 midterms? What are you going to talk about 2028 presidential? Anything early we should be thinking about?
I think 26 is going to be a great year for Democrats for all the reasons we've been talking about. And I'm interested to see how deep it goes, and if we flip some chambers that we weren't expecting to flip, or it could be a real, it could have some real impacts. And
everyone else is looking at the top, but you're really looking at the whole thing.
Exactly. I mean, even some some city councils that, MAGA took over and are doing a lot of book bans. I mean, some of that stuff could just be pulled apart. And so there could be some really important results way down ballot. So I'll be watching that. 28, here's my take on 28. I am excited to have a primary that we haven't gotten to have in a long time, where it'll be wide open and we get a lot of people run. And I maybe contrary to what other people think, do not want to take anybody off the table yet, do not want to game out, oh, we have to have, it's going to have to be this type of person, this gender, from this type of state, this race, this whatever. I think that what we need is a wide open primary. I have lots of, I already talked about Pete. Josh Shapiro is a New Deal leader, right? There's a lot of people that I like that may run, but I'm excited to see us have. I like, some people are already like getting worried about a big primary, and oh my gosh, I'm all in for it at the beginning. Let's have as many people run who want. Let's see who catches fire. Let's see who has a vision that can inspire people. None of this will that type of person has never been elected before. Barack Obama was not elected till Barack Obama was elected, right? And so I think we've got to let's have a full on come one come all primary for the beginning, where we see what the idea, have that real test and battle of ideas, because that will make the nominee stronger against whoever they're going to face in 08. I'm 28. I went back 20 years. 28.
Well, 08 was a good year too, so
Yeah.
whatever. Listen, you've been very kind with your time. It's great spending
Mm,
time with you. You and I could talk about this for hours. We usually do.
yes.
And we will have you on again because there's more to talk about. And as the year goes on, maybe we'll do this again, see where we are. So
I would love to.
I thank you for all you do. I thank you. I'll tell you what I'm really going to thank you for. I thank you for your optimism about the country and where we are and where we can go and who we could be. And I think whether
Mm,
you're a Democrat or Republican, especially, we're heading into this 250th anniversary of the country, to
yes.
have optimism. I find all of us are a little down about the country and the divisions, but Debbie, you give us hope, to use your word.
Oh,
You give us
thank
hope.
you so much. I'm
And
so grateful for our friendship and for everything you do. And thank you it's been really fun to spend some time with you today.
well, I appreciate that. And listen, Debbie, as I like to tell my guests, don't forget, stay unconventional.
I
So
love it.
thank you. Let me just have some quick closing comments here, if I may. Look, you can see why Debbie Cox Bultan is a leader in the Democratic Party, but is also a thought leader on so many issues and helping getting people involved in government. Democrat, Republican, Independent. What's important is getting involved. I say that a lot on the show, and I say that to all of you who are listening. What's really important is fighting for what you believe in, and I hope that came across today. Now, Debbie took it to one side, and is obviously talking about the Democratic Party, but there's a lot to be said, for just involvement, no matter where you happen to be. And I really hope that folks who are listening think about that. Look, there's going to be a battle in the Democratic Party between the left and the center. We know that's coming. The Republicans have a similar problem. The Republican Party has a tremendous divide, and part of that divide in the Republican Party is it a party to represent people with a certain point of view, or is it a party to represent one person? And I think if we look at the events of the last couple of weeks, I think there isn't much question about that. I was just at commencement, or as they call it, the final exercises at the University of Virginia, where former President Jim Ryan, former president of the university, talked about doing the right thing and knowing what is right and knowing what is wrong. Putting yourself on the American currency, wrong. Allowing companies to pour tons of millions of dollars to build a ballroom in the White House and us not knowing who are the people contributing, and they're the same people who are trying to get different contracts and issues with the American government, wrong. Creating a fund for your friends and supporters to dip into for whatever reason they want, and we don't even know what that is. Letting rioters who tried to overthrow the American government on January 6th receive funds, your funds, taxpayer funds, wrong. By the way, just as we were coming on, a federal judge just threw that out a few minutes ago, temporarily. We'll see where that goes, but it's wrong. It's wrong. We know what's right. We know what's wrong. And congressional leaders do also. And Debbie got to this a little bit in her comments. Congressional leaders know what's right and they know what's wrong. And it's time for them to stand up and do what's right and say what's right. They need to show courage and they need to show a backbone and they need to do what they need to do for the country and not just for one person. And if that means they lose, so what? Losing is not the worst thing in the world. Not standing up and not doing what is right, that is. So let's all remember, let's try to do the right thing. And let's make our elected officials accountable for the same. Well, look, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the show. Thank you, Debbie Cox Bultan, for being with us. Folks, if you're listening, please subscribe. Remember, you could find us wherever you get your podcasts, and you could watch us on Spotify or YouTube. YouTube is YouTube at UT-Richard Gordon. And as I like to tell you all, don't forget, stay unconventional. Thanks for joining us today.
You've been listening to Unconventional Times with your host, Richard Gordon. Check out all of the episodes of Unconventional Times on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Richard Gordon and all of his unconventional conversations, head on over to unconventionaltimes.com. Thanks for listening.